Hey guys, Qastor here with another Cardfight Vanguard deck profile. Today's deck is Granblu. Specifically, we're going to be looking at a modified Soul Management Basskirk build that I made recently. I'd tried using Qastor for a while. I know he's the more popular power breaker. People like to use him for his power with Dragon Spirit as a booster, and then use his main skill, Counterblast 2, and placed on Vanguard and call a card to rear guard from your drop zone. But to me, having to ride Qastor over and over again is just not very fun, and it's a very boring deck. So I went back to Basskirk, went old school, and tried to use a modified build that does not focus on using the Mega Blast. In fact, with this build, using the Mega Blast can actually hurt you a little bit, because of the fact that you have to go through so many hurdles to set it up anyways. It's really not worth it with all the different kinds of superior calling that you can make with this deck. So let's get on to the deck build. Starting with grade 0s, I run Guiding Zombie as my starting Vanguard. He has Forerunner as his first ability, as most cards that were printed after set 8 referred to as the main retreating starting Vanguard ability, which is when a unit of the same clan rides this unit, you may call it to separate rear guard. I really like his Activate skill. I think he's the better starting Vanguard. Night Kid does use a Counterblast and gives you more options for looking at the top cards of your deck to drop 1, but I think dropping 3 random cards works best. And if you choose not to use Guiding Zombie, you can always use him as fodder for something else, like calling a grade 1 from the drop zone later. Hopefully we will get many different cards in set 13 that will give us more cards that will drop specific units from your deck to set up your toolbox, rather than random chance like drop 3s or drop 2s like what we have now in Granblu. Unfortunately, even though Granblu could be one of the best technical decks, we don't have the support that decks like Pale Moon do, where we can choose the cards that we really need and put them into our toolbox. For triggers, I like to use 4 heals and 12 criticals. My favorite skill to use out of this deck actually is Rusty's Banshee's skill. Rusty's Banshee's skill is you may put her in Soul, and if you have a Granblu Vanguard, you can draw a card. Now, the best thing about using her in this Basskirk deck specifically is not only will she allow you to draw a card in place of her and possibly get something to place on the field or another trigger to guard with in her place, she also gives you +1 to Soul, which with this build specifically you want because you're trying to manage Soul for either calling stuff back from the drop zone to rear guard, or different effects like Dancing Cutlass and such, which you'll see later. I like it also because in this deck specifically, it doesn't really minus you all that much, because although you can choose to use her as a shield and keep her, you also have other triggers in the deck that are also 10k shields because of the fact that we are running all crits for heals. I wouldn't use it too much. Like, don't spam it, because there's no reason to use the effect and waste a card, especially a trigger that you could use for guarding if you don't have a good reason for it, but there's no reason to be afraid of using it. For grade 1s, I run 4 Gustian Perfect Guards, 3 Dandy Guy Romario Vanilla 8k Booster. He makes a nice ride for your grade 1 Vanguard, putting up good defense at 8,000, and he's also good to either throw behind Basskirk as an 8k booster to make a 20k column if you're going against somebody that really likes to use 10k Vanguards, or you can throw him behind Negremarl. In fact, he's the only reason that I can run Negremarl in this deck, to still make a very good column on rear guard and get his skill. I run 3 copies of Deadly Nightmare. The reason I chose to run Deadly Nightmare instead of Samurai Spirit is because although Samurai Spirit is only for one counterblast, Deadly Nightmare works better in this deck because our counterblast could be used better for other things, and it is mainly focused on the soul, so Soul Blast 2 will not be a heavy cost in this deck. We'll have plenty of that to use, and it'll be a good way to get things out of soul that we need or want to resurrect with other effects. So that's why we don't have to really worry about the random soul charging that Bazkirk does, or if we misride anything, is because we do have cards that will get out cards in the soul that we want in our toolbox. I also run Dancing Cutlass, only at 2 because I don't really need him too much, but he is just another Soul Blast 2 to draw, another way to manage the soul a good bit, and who doesn't like a free card if they can get it. For my Vanguard booster, I run Evil Shade at 2, and this is really the only way to make Bazkirk a major threat with the way most people run 11K cards now. The best thing about Evil Shade is that he boosts for 10,000 on your Granblu Vanguard if you drop 2 cards. So he sets up a nice steady drop engine, and with Bazkirk Soul Charge to gain plus 2,000, he also makes a nice 22k column, which is just over what we need to hit 3 stages on 11k Vanguards. And it also helps if you're going up against a Majesty Lord Blaster deck. You may not win because Granblu has low support still, but you will give them a hard time guarding because you're going up against that 12k defense with a 22k attack from your Vanguard. Now we'll look at grade 2s. For grade 2s, I like to run 4 copies of 3-star Chef Pietro. In general, he's a good card. He's 9k, and he has the damage on flipper effect for when he hits Vanguard. So that'll keep most of our counterblasts open for any effects that we do come across that we want to use with counterblasts in this deck. In general, 3-star Chef Pietro is a very good card to run in any Granblu deck for the simple fact that Granblu needs damage on flippers, especially in early game, to get that off as much as you can so you can keep repeating those different resurrecting effects for either Counterblast 1 or if you're running Kakaitis or Negramall Counterblast 2. In this deck, he also helps keep what counterblasts we do use unflipped again, so that if for some reason you really need to use Bazkirk's effect for a final turn gambit possibly, you can use that most likely because of the fact that you will have your damage unflipped with Pietro's effect. I then choose to run 4 copies of Commodore Blue Blood also. He's a nice 10k vanilla. He's a good card to ride for your grade 2 Vanguard. And you can also choose to target him for resurrection with any effects that target specific cards from the drop zone because of the fact that he can hit 10k Vanguards by himself. Or you can throw your extra Evil Shade or any Dancing Cutlasses behind him to try and salvage a decent column out of their low power. And lastly, we'll put in 3 Deadly Spirits. Deadly Spirit works well in combination with his deck because, again, like I said with Deadly Nightmare, he does pull off his effect by using Soul Blast instead of Counterblasts. So you can once again make use of the fact that this deck relies a lot on Bazkirk drawing in Soul, and not only will it get you a card on the field, but it will also help weed out any cards that are trapped in your soul from soul charging. And last are the grade 3s. First off, I run 1 copy of Dragon Undead Skull Dragon. I'm pretty sure most people run him. He is a promo card. I think most Granblu players nowadays, though, tech at least 1 copy because he is pretty powerful and he's got a good skill. You Counterblast 1 and have to retire grade 2 or greater Granblu rear guard, but if you do, you can superior call him from the drop zone. And plus, he gets 3,000 power extra added when he attacks, and then he gets returned to the drop zone, so you can do his effect again if you need to. In general, he's a good card because he can hit cross-ride cards with his 13k attack by himself, and also he makes for a good target if you put him in front of Dandy Guy Romario. He can make a 21k column and really beat the hell out of those 11k Vanguards. Next, I run as a tech slot Deadly Swordmaster, mainly because of the fact that I do have Deadly Spirit and Deadly Nightmare also, so that if I do get in a tight spot where I need to Superior Ride a grade 3, and say he was at the top of my deck and he got dropped at the beginning of the game with Guiding Zombie's effect, I don't have to worry because I can always Superior Ride him by just retiring Deadly Spirit and Deadly Nightmare, and then I have a nice decent 11k grade 3 Vanguard for the meantime until I get Baskirk. My other grade 3 is Witch Doctor of the Abyss Negramorl. It is only safe to run him at 2 copies because, unfortunately, he is a very low power card. 8,000, the lowest power grade 3 in the game that I know of so far. His skill is great when he's placed on Vanguard or Rearguard. If you Counterblast 2, you can Superior Call any unit you choose from the drop zone. He's basically a prior to Limit Break Kakaitis, but he has the lower power and he can be used on Vanguard or Rearguard. He's a horrible choice if you have to ride him. I would actually recommend staying at grade 2 instead of riding Negramorl. That's a personal choice though. He sets up his skill by himself perfectly because you can either use him to target Dandy Guy Romario and make a nice 16k column, giving himself a booster, or you can use him to call something else from the drop zone that you need that doesn't have its own retiring effect, or calling effect. For example, you can also call another copy of Negramorl and chain the effect, or you could target your vanilla 10k attacker, Commodore Blue Blood, to make a nice single column with that to hit 10k Vanguards. For my main grade 3 Vanguard, I run 4 copies of King of Demonic Seas Baskirk. You can do his Mega Blast, which is an Activate, Soul Blast 8, Counterblast 5, and choose up to 5 Granblu units from your drop zone and call them to Rearguard. However, I like to use him for his main skill, which is Auto Soul Charge 1 at the beginning of your main phase, and he gains plus 2,000 power. This skill is what makes the entire deck build run. It gives him plus 2,000 power so that with Evil Shade and his skill behind him as a Vanguard booster, he can attack for 22k easily and put the pressure on your opponent's Vanguard, whether they be 10k or 11k. And it also helps to set up the Soul really well because you get a +1 to Soul each turn, and you're going to want to use that for most of your effects, like Deadly Spirit, Deadly Nightmare, or if you happen to get it, Dancing Cutlass, just because those are the main focuses of this deck, is to have steady calling from your drop zone so that no matter what your opponent deals out, you can constantly recover from it and keep the pressure up. That's it for this deck build. I hope you guys liked it. Please leave any comments below once again, just like last time, and let me know any other deck builds you'd like to see. Also, let me know any other Vanguard themed videos you'd like to see. If I get enough requests, I may do a tutorial video on how to play the game, or various game theory or game mechanics. Thanks for watching.